November is here, and it's time for these teams to get down to business if they want to play in the December 6th football championship. You like how I threw that in there?
Yeah, you did. I mean, you tied that in quite nicely. I think it's a great time of the year. We've got some outstanding games coming up this week. Games that are going to have a meaning as far as who's going to win the conference and who's going to win the division. Let's start off, though, with Rice and FIU. This is going to be a decent game because Rice coming off 4 straight wins. They have to go to Miami. But here's the stat of Rice you got to know. We talked about them getting healthy. They've scored 41 or more points in 4 of their last 5 games. But this FIU defense, they're known for turnovers. They've got to take care of the football.
FIU is a very opportunistic defense.
Absolutely. Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech. You have to go back to 1973, the NCAA Division II playoffs, the last time these two teams met. And you look at the Bulldogs, 4-0, and that's just the 6th 4-0 league start since they moved to Division I back in '75. This is going to be a battle of great quarterbacks. You look at Brandon Doughty of Western Kentucky, Cody Sokol of Louisiana Tech. These two, last week, they combined for nearly 800 passing yards. Maybe a long game, but it's going to be a fun game to watch.
People want to stop the run and load the box. I think that we can pass it, and that showed last week. And I think that we're willing to do whatever we got to do to win, if that's run the ball or throw the ball. And we want to keep that balanced attack, obviously, but we definitely want to keep giving it into our playmakers' hands. Like keep it into Dixon's hand, keep giving it into those guys like Paul Turner, Carlos Henderson. Get those guys the ball.
Well, how do you see the offense matching up with the La Tech's defense?
I think it's going to be tough. But Louisiana Tech's playing with such confidence right now. I think and they keep the ball away from you too. So I think it's going to be a good game for Louisiana Tech.
UAB visits Florida Atlantic, and the spotlight is going to be on 2 of the league's best all-purpose performers, UAB's J.J. Nelson and FAU's Lucky Whitehead. Both players impact the game in a number of ways.
I like what Coach Clark has done at UAB and Coach Partridge has done at FAU. Both have done an outstanding job of building confidence in their team. I'll be calling that game. You look at J.J. Nelson, Jamarcus Nelson, but we'll call him J.J. He had his second 100-yard kickoff return of the season last week. He leads Conference USA in kick return at over almost 35 yards a kick. Punt return average over 10. But keep an eye on the Owls' Lucky Whitehead. I've been watching tape of this young man. He not only is great at receiving, but he also runs his fly sweep. He is an impact player. That's going to be a fun game.
We saw last week how effective UTEP's defense can be, recording their first shutout in nearly a decade. This week they'll have to face Southern Miss with its emerging weapon in receiver Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas is gradually becoming an impact player in the conference. I watched him a couple of weeks ago. He was very impressive. But the key to me is, can this UTEP defense gang tackle the way they did against UTSA? When I went back and looked at that tape, every time UTSA was tackled, there were 4 or 5 UTEP jerseys around it. Can they continue it? Southern Miss, I tell you what, Todd Monken does a good job of mixing things up, a lot of window dressing. They're going to have to make sure their eyes are right in this football game because Southern Miss is explosive offensively. UTEP, can they continue what they did against UTSA on the defensive side?
Taking a look at this week's matchups, what are some games that really stand out to you?
Oh, Middle Tennessee, I think we talked about them. They have to go against BYU. Old Dominion taking on Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt, I don't think they're one of the cream of the crop in the SEC. And ODU, and Bobby Wilder's going to have his team excited because this is one of those games that can almost, I don't want to say salvage the season, but can put a stamp on that season and say, hey, we're a good football team. I think they're going to come fired up in this game. And the 2 non-conference games intrigue me this week.
Well, that'll be a huge win for Old Dominion if they can get a win over an SEC school.
It's not only a huge win for ODU, I think it's a huge win for the conference because I don't care who you beat. If you beat one of those power conferences and you say, yes, we beat those guys, that puts a stamp on you. That shows how legitimate you are, and I think ODU has a good chance of winning that football game.
But that right there is an argument as to why Marshall.
I know. I've been doing this a long time, and I used to be, you're right, they haven't played anybody. But now I realize how good Marshall is. I've seen him in person. I've watched the tapes. I break down numbers. I love breaking down the numbers for what they've done this year. This is an outstanding football team offensively and defensively. Probably one of the most complete teams in college football, at least in the top 20. So when people say they haven't played anybody, they were marked from the beginning of the season. Everybody had picked them. So they've got to bring their best game every week, and I think they've done that. So that argument they haven't played anybody, I understand it, but I don't buy it 100%.
And what I think is impressive is they're only one of 3 teams that are still unbeaten.
Exactly. I mean, you look at some of the big teams that have lost. Alabama lost. Oklahoma's lost a couple. Marshall hasn't lost yet, folks. They deserve to be in the top, not just 25, in the top 20. But guys, there's this little bias towards that, and I think that's wrong.